That's bogus.
And with that, let's welcome in our guest. It is Damian Parson of the Locked On NFL Draft Show, who knows more about these guys than any of us. So, Damian, thanks for joining us today, man. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Appreciate the time, man.
All right, settle the debate over the Falcons before we get into the Browns. What do you think?
I wouldn't have done it. I think 8th overall, this is a team that needed to address the edge rusher position. Latu was still on the board, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. They ended up going defensive line 2nd round, but even those picks to me felt a little disjointed. Or like, where's Rook Ororo out of Clemson going to play? You have David Onyemata, you have Grady Jarrett. I do like Braylon Trice, and I like Brandon Dortless as well. So it was just kind of, I felt 2nd round like Terry Fontenot kind of heard the criticisms on not addressing defense in the 1st round in like 4 consecutive drafts and decided to go heavy in round 2. But I just don't understand the plan right now or where they're going to play some of those guys. I think I ended up giving them a C, maybe C- for their draft.
When you look at the AFC North and you see all of the draft picks in the draft class, who you think walked away with the best draft out of the Steelers, Bengals, Browns, and Ravens?
I think all 4 teams did pretty well. I think the Steelers were the team that walked away with the highest grade, if I remember correctly. Going O-line, right? I've said it on the pod all 2023 and for the whole entire draft season. Dan Moore, who played their left tackle spot last year, believe he had accounted for 55 pressures by himself, right? There's some offensive lines that only allow that in a season. So in that situation, needing to get better on the interior. It didn't matter who's at quarterback, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, or Justin Fields. And for them to get Mason McCormick on late in the draft, be able to get Troy Fautanu and then Zach Frazier, the center out of West Virginia, love those picks, adding Roman Wilson to George Pickens. I think now, whoever's at quarterback, you have Arthur Smith, who's been in Atlanta and Tennessee. We're going to see a heavy run game with Najee Harris and with Jalen Warren. You're going to probably, especially with these 2 quarterbacks, depending on who's playing and starting most of the season, I expect to see a lot of what they call king, queen, and even kind of diamond pistol sets where you have multiple backs in the backfield with the quarterback. He gets very creative with his sets, and I expect to see a lot of that in Pittsburgh.
I'm curious. Tyvis was talking before about Mims, the guy the Bengals drafted in the 1st round, the offensive lineman. Everybody seems to think the upside on him is he could be the best offensive lineman in this draft, but he's barely played in college. He's a crazy physical specimen. What do you think of him?
I love the potential. I love the size, the skill set. He's athletic, quick out of the blocks, be able to get to his spots, his set points. He's rarely ever beaten around the corner. And main thing for him is, like you said, he doesn't have a lot of experience. So dealing with highly active rushers with multiple counters that will sell outside, work back cross face inside, to a clear path to the quarterback. You want to see him, have to deal with that and learn from it. It's going to be interesting to see how, or if they make it I guess you could say make it a competition in camp. They brought in Trent Brown, who was with the Patriots and I think the Raiders over the last couple of years. I think he's on like a 1-year deal. You have Orlando Brown on the left side. So probably Trent and Demarius Mims battle it out in training camp this summer rather. But I think it's a good pick, a guy that can be a cornerstone type of tackle. I've always believed with his athleticism, and if I remember correctly, I was told that he actually took left tackle snaps at times in practice. He can flip to left tackle. He's 6'8", 340, 350, but he moves very well, extremely strong. The one thing they got to work on him with is kind of technical aspects, his footwork in the run game. To be able to be that big and physical and that strong, you want to see him start to wash guys down, displace guys more in the run game, and create bigger alleys and lanes for the running backs.
David, let's talk about another offensive lineman. Obviously, we talked about Zach Zinner here for the Browns, who they took in the 3rd round. A lot of starts at Michigan. Seems like a good, solid player. If the Browns needed him to play this year, because they've had injuries on their own line, is he a guy who's a plug-and-play guy ready to go?
I think so, especially because Kevin Stefanski has always kind of leaned into the run game. You watch Michigan the last 2 years. One thing about Jim Harbaugh, he ran the football, right? And whether it was zone, gap scheming power. Those guys from that offensive line know how to get vertical. They know how to double team, climb up to the second level, move guys out of the way, and create running lanes and even cutback lanes. I think in pass protection, he has enough footwork and nimbleness in his feet to move laterally and mirror rushers, but at the same time, you're playing guard. You got a bumper on each side of you anyway, so knowing how to close angles and close doors would be big for him. I think he could step in as a rookie and play some significant snaps if he's healthy and he's ready to go.
You know, when you look at the second round pick, Mike Hall, a lot of people were upset because it was some wide receivers, available for the Cleveland Browns at that 54th pick. Do you think that they did the right thing by getting a defensive tackle, or do you think they should have addressed the wide receiver position at that point?
I'm fine with them taking Michael Hall. He was one of my favorite interior defensive linemen in this class. A guy, to me, he might have been arguably top 2 to 3 in terms of pass rush ability. Talking about agility, quick twitch, strength. I remember watching him down at the Senior Bowl. He was so difficult to defend in one-on-ones. He's got, good, I think 33, almost 34-inch arms. He knows how to, use different quick, different counters to win and collapse the pocket. And he can, convert speed to power. This is a guy that I absolutely felt like was an outstanding pick for them. You have Myles Garrett. You have Zadarius Smith, right? But I believe Myles Garrett is one of the most double-teamed edge rushers in the league. I know Myles at some point is like, can I get a little of that TJ Watt love? I know Steeler fans won't be happy about this, but it's the truth. TJ Watt isn't double-teamed nearly as much as Myles Garrett. So if you can create more of an environment where defense or offensive lines have to come out and say, listen, we can't just double Myles because they have multiple guys that can win one-on-one opportunities. I think Michael Hall absolutely gives them that. Ideally a 3-tech, and for me, I would love to have him as that 3-tech spot, a line beside Myles, get that quick twitch, that explosiveness from those two guys rushing off the same side. Let's give some offensive lines hell.
When you look at the 49ers, obviously they got Ricky out of Florida. Which receiver, it's been a lot of scuffle about one of the receivers moving on between Debo and Brandon Ayuk. Which receiver do you think Ricky is there to replace?
I kind of feel like it's Ayuk. I think, listen, getting the calls and texts during the draft that, hey, they preferred to move Debo. And I understand why, right? He's battled some injuries. They use him in a variety of ways, but, he has a decent contract as well. And Ayuk is the better pure receiver out of those two. But the trade compensation was like, I think I heard day 3, 4th round at the earliest for Debo, where teams would have probably given up a 2nd round for Ayuk. So I think the draft compensation for them would be greater because at the end of the day, if Brock Purdy, is able to repeat, right, what he did the last 2 seasons and even getting them back into being the kings of the NFC, back to a Super Bowl, how do you walk into that offseason and try and lowball him on a contract, right? No matter how, if you think he's the catalyst, if you think he's the one, we always in the scouting community, we talked about trucks and trailers. Do I view Brock as a truck? Not necessarily. He's more of a hitch. He connects the coach who's the coach and Kyle Shanahan, who I think is the truck of this situation, and the roster as being the trailer or vice versa, however you want to look at it. He connects everything together, and the hitch is important too, right? So I think no matter how you feel about Brock, if he goes and repeats the level of success, you have to pay him. And it's going to be hard to do that and pay, what's the going rate for number 1 wide receivers right now? 28, 29, 30 mil?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, Amon-Ra just got $30 million a year. Now, I think Amon-Ra is better than Ayuk.
I had to say, I don't think he's getting that much.
But Jamar Chase is going to get 35 at least, right?
Well,
Yes.
Jefferson, 35
but
at least.
Brandon ain't that.
I know, but he's the latest guy, right? So he's got to get close to 30, I would think, at least.
He had numbers like that last year.
He's a dog. Like, he's their best route runner.
Yeah.
Like, speed down the field, catch radius. And to be honest with you, if you go back and watch the Super Bowl against Steve Spagnuolo's man covers defense, everybody else was locked up but him. He just wasn't the first progression. If they targeted him, he had a touchdown that Brock missed. I think he had 2 that Brock missed, actually. So, like, and that pressure had a lot to do with it as well. But he was getting open against those talented DBs. He's a dog, and if you put him in an offense where he's getting 150, 60, 70 targets like a lot of the top wide receivers, I think we'll view him a little bit better. But in this situation, you got CMC, you got George Kittle, you have Debo and Ayuk. It's hard to just say, hey, let's take him away. It's hard to take just one guy away in that offense. So I think Ricky Pearsall probably is going to be replacing Ayuk, but it all depends on how Kyle Shanahan wants to do it as well. If they view that, hey, we don't need a receiver to do the running back things that Debo does, and we bring in Jacob Cowing to bring the speed that we haven't had, bring in Ricky Pearsall to make this a more well-rounded group, and then pay Ayuk, by all means, I think that'll be a successful plan as well.
We were talking before you joined about just the lack of spots on the Browns 53. So how did Jamari Thrash and Nathaniel Watson make this roster?
Man, Jamari Thrash, I actually interviewed him a couple days before the draft. He was on the Locked On Info Draft podcast, so you can go check it out. Outstanding, intelligent young man. He's very attention detailed. He talks about how much film he watches. He actually he started to study Amari Cooper, which is funny because now that's his teammate. And I told him, now he gets to actually learn from the guy. But route running, he's very tempoed, patient, knows how to use his body with stemming and pushing guys vertical, breaking at the top of his routes. He had a successful week in Mobile as well at the Senior Bowl, and he actually tested better than some people actually expected at the Combine. I think being able to be that depth piece who has starter upside in this offense, he said, I'm willing to do whatever they need me to do, whatever a team needs him to do, whether that's play outside at the X, play the Z, play the slot, whatever it is. He's a very coachable young man, and I think with his IQ and what he brings to the table, he's going to really be in the good graces of Kevin Stefanski. It's all about going out there and gaining that chemistry with Deshaun Watson and the quarterbacks, him and Jameis Winston. With Nathaniel Watson, I actually said this, I think, on the pod. I said he is an AFC North type of linebacker. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and one of his favorite things is I like to hit people. I want to hit people. He's physical. He's a downhill young man. He does give you some of that kind of stand up, work on the outside type of versatility. He can mug the A gaps and like double A gap simulated pressures and everything. Is he a outstanding coverage guy? Like he's not going to be Micah Parsons and none of these like super athletic coverage defenders, but he, in the Senior Bowl game, he dropped off into a spot, read the route concepts, and made a big hit across the middle that got everybody out of their feet during the actual game. This young man is very, very determined, intelligent, like I said, versatile. I think he'll be willing to play special teams also. I think those are the ways that he'll be able to find his way on this 53-man roster.
Mikey.
Damon, I'm curious, anytime we have a guest on who's not embedded into the Cleveland scene like we are, I'm curious what their opinion on Deshaun Watson is and what you've seen from him over the last 2 years as a member of the Cleveland Browns, going back to Houston, and whether or not you're confident he can regain that elite form we saw prior to him coming to Cleveland.
Man, watching him over the last 2 years, of course, the first year, coming off the suspension and everything, you could tell a guy didn't play football in quite some time, right? I have not seen the confident Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston. And there could be a litany of reasons for that, everything that was going on in his personal life off the field. I think the talent is still there. The ability to move the pocket, create second reaction throws, the arm talent is still there. Granted, I think also adjusting from a dome primarily to the frigid temperatures in Cleveland late in the season it's going to something that guys take time to get used to, coming from being, in control weather to no one can control it but God. I think that's the situation where he had to get comfortable with. Like I said, everything else is there for him physically. I think he's still the same guy. Now it's all about getting him back to being comfortable, confident to execute this offense and play at the level we've seen him play with. There's enough weapons on this offense for him to be able to give defenses a lot of nightmares from David Njoku stepping up. Hopefully we get Nick Chubb back, ready to roll and healthy after that nasty knee injury. Adding Jamari Thrash, adding Jerry Jeudy. He has route runners. He has speed. There's a lot here. Cedric Tillman, the second-year receiver out of Tennessee, being a big body, contested catch, back shoulder fade type of guy, possession receiver of sorts. You guys did what I like teams to do. Build your receiver core like a basketball team. You got Elijah Moore still there. You have your pick of the litter, right? Your different flavors. I think he can get back to being what we've seen, but it's going to take him mentally being there, and I don't think we've seen that yet.
Fair, Damian. Appreciate it, man. Great stuff. Thanks for the insight.
Hey, appreciate the invite, guys.